called HB149. HB149 is an important bill for post-license education. And what we want to do is kind of show you some of the issues that are involved here in HB149. This bill has been filed. The representative that has filed it is our friend Tommy Thompson from Owensboro. First of all, the bill is a statutory change. And the statutory change, essentially, in its simplest form, without showing you the actual bill, I'll be happy to send the actual bill to you. But in its simplest form, it requires 48 hours of post-license education within the first 2 years of licensing. What that means is within the first 2 years, after someone gets a license, they would have to take some higher level education that would engage them in their industry. Now, this is important to note. That statutory change is exactly that, a statutory change. However, if the bill passes and becomes law, then we need to go to step 2 and impose potential regulatory changes that will be advocated for by KAR. And those regulatory changes will be changes that are implemented by the Kentucky Real Estate Commission. We have already entered into a discussion with the Real Estate Commission that would enable us to do certain things should this law be passed. So keep this in mind. These are the regulatory things that we would be pushing for after the law is passed. And it's very important that you and your legislators know the terms of what we're pushing for here. If the bill passes, what we would ask, and the Real Estate Commission has already tentatively agreed to do, would be to divide up those 48 hours across 2 years. So in other words, at the end of the second year, you're not going to have all the new licensees registering at the 31st of December at midnight to try to finish up their class before the deadline. Essentially, there would be 24 hours for the first 2 years of licensure. A second issue would be that a portion of the required hours would be elective. Now, this is something that our committees will talk about more and be able to chime in and be able to, but we're not there yet. But one of the big things behind post-license education is that adult learning theory calls for, when adults are educated, to be effective educators, we need to give the adult learner the ability to somewhat set their own future. So what we would like to see is a portion of these hours be elective. So for example, if someone wants to get a broker education, they can take broker classes. If they want to go and focus on commercial real estate, they should be able to focus on CCIM courses or GRI. So essentially what we would be asking KREC to do would be to approve designation courses such as CCIM, GRI, CRS, or ABR toward post-license credit. What we hope to achieve with this, and this would be the idea, and again our full association will be engaged in these potential regulatory changes, would be that we allow the adult student who has wanted to, and who has passed and got a real estate license to kind of set their own course and not just essentially have some big, long 48-hour course that is mandated by the state, and the state tells everybody for every hour of education what they're going to have. This allows the student to choose their own course, at least part of it, and for that to be elective. It's a lot like a college degree. When you go to college, there's electives that should be able to be chosen. Next, all post-license hours will be counted toward broker credit or broker's license. So again, if a person wants to go the extra mile and get their broker's license, that post-license education would also count toward that. And all these things the Kentucky Real Estate Commission have been very favorable to. None of these things are strange to the Kentucky Real Estate Commission. I've talked to the executive director and others. However, it's very difficult for us to come out to the full public and say this is the way it's going to be when the commission hasn't technically promulgated those regulations. However, this is the vision for where we want to go. But unfortunately, the legislature, all that they kind of see, or all they do see is in the legislation, is 48 hours of post-license education. They don't see the benefits, and they certainly don't see the full vision of what would be desired here by the association. Here are the people who have endorsed House Bill 149. Senator Albert Robinson helped us author it. He is going to be key to help us see it through the Senate. should it get to the Senate later this session. Representative Tommy Thompson, who is a builder, a real estate licensee, also has, he is the sponsor of this bill and is firmly behind it. The Governmental Affairs Committee at KAR, we want to thank your committee for listening to this at the last meeting and being able to vote affirmatively. At last several meetings, actually, the KAR Governmental Affairs Committee has endorsed this idea. The Kentucky Real Estate Education Foundation, the KAR Board of Directors, the KAR Delegate Body, and the Kentucky Real Estate Commission have endorsed House Bill 149. Also, individual, and I think this says a lot, all of the major associations, and every association is major in its area, but essentially the associations that represent more than half of KAR's membership have voted to endorse House Bill 149, and these are individual boards of directors voting they discussed it and they said that this would be a good thing for the industry. Let's talk about just a few reasons to support, because these are things that you would have to recommunicate to a legislator. And we'll be happy to provide these things in writing to you after this webinar. Pre-license coursework is very theoretical, and licensees need to engage and relate practical coursework to the real world through post-license education that exceeds CE. Now, the first 2 years of licensure, a person wouldn't have to take, quote-unquote, CE, continuing education. They would take their post-license courses, 24 hours the first year, 24 hours the second. Number two, CE requirements right now in Kentucky are the lowest in the country at 6 hours annually. I think we're tied with Illinois or Arkansas one for the lowest number of hours in the country. Literally, plumbers have more continuing education that is required of them to maintain their professional licensure than real estate agents. And it's the consensus of our leadership that it isn't enough to ensure that new agents get the tools they need at the outset of their career. 3, 24 states have post-license requirements. Now keep in mind, one of the objections I often hear to this reason is that, well, we're Kentucky. We should be able to do what Kentucky wants to do, not what everybody else does. The only reason we provide this number is for a comparative analysis. It's a lot like when you do a broker price opinion. If you do a broker price opinion, you go to your MLS and you look up different properties in the same area of the house or the home where you're wanting to do your opinion. Our appraisers go out to get comps to be able to provide a comparative analysis of what's happening around them. And 24, almost half the states, have post-license requirements. The average age, here's another big reason. An average age of a real estate licensee in Kentucky is 54 years. With 300 or 400 people annually entering the industry, new agents are better prepared for practice if we have the post-license program in place. Courses are also developed for post-license, can also be used to provide a larger choice of CE courses for the state's licensees. This last reason to support HB 149 is major, and it's not realized. This is often one of the most overlooked reasons. Right now, one of the biggest complaints about CE, especially through distance learning, through learning through the computer, is that there aren't enough courses out there that would that people can take that are interesting and relevant to them. Most of the distance learning is developed, or all of it, for the most part, well, the vast majority of it is developed by groups outside the state who want to do nothing more than to sell our people and our agents courses. Well, it's going to be the goal to essentially, what you can do is if you create these post-license courses, you can divide those courses up and you can offer them back for CE for all the other agents. So courses developed here can be reused for the average agent who's already licensed and who technically doesn't need continuing education, or they don't need post-license, but they can use it for continuing education hours. So that's another implication of the bill that is often overlooked. Here are some FAQs that you will be posed with. I don't think there's a group that I've spoken to yet that hasn't asked one of these questions. Is this bill about money for educators? Well, I'll let you be the judge. Essentially, this bill will yield about $140,000 for different educators throughout the state that might sell a continuing or a post-license course. Sell 48 hours of post-license. That would be about a cost of around $350 a year or so for the typical agent. If you divide that among the 45 approved providers in the state who could technically offer that course, you're only looking about $3,000 per provider. As a matter of fact, this is one of the reasons there's only a very few number of full-time real estate instructors in the state. There's a handful of them, but most of them have real estate practices or they teach at a college or university where really recoupment of their dollars that they've expended in course development doesn't have to be made. Essentially, this is not about money for educators. If you do the math, someone told me once that this bill would be all about making millionaires out of the real estate educators. Well, the whole CE environment in the state of Kentucky is not worth $1 million. It's only worth about $850,000. In this particular case, you're only looking at about $140,000 total, so there's no way that this could be just about money for educators. In addition, here's another. This was asked to President Jones at the Interim Joint Committee meeting. Why is KAR focusing on new agents instead of the existing ones? This is a very, very important question. First of all, we should hold our head high that we supported, as leaders in the industry, that KAR supported HB149 last year, which called for more continuing education across the state. We proposed doubling it from 6 hours to a more national standard of 12. The issue here is that we couldn't get that issue passed, and we won't make any bones about why. There were certain legislators, and KAR actually interviewed, and we did a survey across 400 different realtors throughout the state and asked them, did they want more continuing education? And the results came back mixed. Half said yes, half said no. But it's also interesting to take a look at the dynamics of our population. Half of the real estate licensees, or half I should say of realtors who pay dues, don't do any transactions in a year. Approximately half. The number is actually 44%, but the number of agents who do 1 to 3 transactions is another 7%. So we see here essentially, why would agents who don't do any business in a year want to impose more continuing education requirements in something that they themselves don't make any money at? So KAR shouldn't apologize for trying to promote higher standards. The bottom line is that 50% that didn't want the education had the ears of the legislators. But the good news is that for new agents and post-licensing, the legislators did desire that we have additional criteria for people on the front end of their process. That's good news. And from that case, we're essentially working with legislators to develop a high-quality consensus among our groups on what should pass and what should be policy. And then everybody should be happy, or at least most people should be happy with this, because KAR is committing to a higher quality real estate education regimen for the state, while essentially garnering support of legislators who also believe that that should be the case and that current existing agents don't need any more CE. So here's another frequently asked question. Another frequently asked question, is this bill about keeping people out of the industry? And that is a resounding no. That would be antitrust. It is not about, it's about raising professional standards. And I want to say that publicly. I know our president would also do that.